After a long and drawing weekend, let's find out how the markets closed on the first day of opening at 5 p.m. this afternoon. This is Market Pulse. In a day that was very confusing, a lot of investors and volumes very low since they didn't know where to put their money. And I suppose you would have put your money where your mouth is if that were to be the case. Instability, inconsistency, all running through the JSE this afternoon. As you can see, we shedded about 1.5% on the day, sitting down at 52,672 points, mostly having to do with that strong dollar that came in very, very positively following some of the actions taken by President Trump in the United States of America. So if you look, for example, at your top 40 there, that lost more than 1.6%, and the industrials also being a contributing factor, losing about 1.27%. But biggest number perhaps maybe that we need to look at is your resources. And as you can see, they were not doing relatively well at all. I saw some of the companies there bleeding. And you can see that they were down by 3.12%. You would remember at the strengthening of the rand, we saw the resources sector come back, but now obviously losing some of those gains that they had. You can look at the JSE minus there that we're looking at too, obviously there, starting with your gold that was really flat, nothing to write home about, and your platinum number perhaps maybe the most impressive to write home about, as you can see there. Since it's bought in dollar terms, that does somehow contribute positively to that particular number. $984 a barrel is not such an ounce. It's not such a terrible number to sit by. So those people who are in your Anglo-Plat and your likes of London will be very happy to see that particular number change so strongly. Taking a look then, therefore, at your currencies, this was where the problem was, as you can see that 13 Rand 28 cents. If you had said to me, after all the shenanigans that we saw take place within the political sphere, that the rand-dollar exchange will be sitting at 13 Rands and 28 cents, perhaps maybe you would have not gotten my attention. But there it is, sitting nicely there, very strong, the rand. The pound there costing you 16 Rand and 94, and that is after, obviously, Theresa May announced that, obviously, June 8 is going to be the big day when they will be going to the polls. That's going to be quite interesting to have a look at. So keep a close eye on that. We could keep a close eye on the euro as well. 14 Rands and 21 cents to the positive, and weakening, unfortunately, against the South African rand there. So all this, what does it tell us? It tells us that we are in turmoil. We are in really critical moments that you have to actually follow the money. And how do you follow the money? You look at where the money is flowing out. And unfortunately, because of the long weekend, the JSE has not done itself any favors as other markets continue to rally pretty strong. There goes your commodities there. You can look at your price of Brent crude. I've just mentioned that Automobile South Africa thinks that this price will definitely be impacted, and if it continues like this next month, we'll have an increment of about 35 cents or 55 cents a litre. So that's going to be interesting to have a look at, and therefore we'll look at the rest of the platinums there in your gold. Like I said earlier on, a little bit in the positive side, but nothing really to write home about. We don't do these things. We don't touch them. We don't want to know anything about them. We expect experts like Tony Modise to tell us exactly what happened at 5 p.m. at the close of business. Were the volumes there? Were they not? Tony Modise, welcome, sir, and top of the evening to you.
Thank you for having me, brother.
Listen, I don't want to talk about anything else apart from two things. I just wanted you to touch on what happened with the currency and also what happened on the resources sector.
The whole market has been very quite heavy for the JSE. We saw commodities really pulling back the whole of the JSE or share index back. I mean, it's really being pulled back by the tensions between North Korea and the U.S. And also, iron ore prices have been very bearish for a couple of days now. After just the Chinese market has been pulling back. Remember, Chinese markets, China is really one of the biggest consumer of iron ore. So when they pull back, they really try to stop buying as well in terms of iron ore. So technically, it really pulled back the JSE. And also, I mean, the whole thing that came through out of the UK from Theresa May, requesting a snap election. It really gave some traction to the pound and really added pressure to the FTSE. So a lot of JSE stocks, as well, they are listed on the FTSE, they came out quite negatively. It's a number of sentiments really that has been pulling back the South African market, but in the rand has been holding strong throughout. We see the commodities are trading under pressure. The likes of the Nespas are trading under pressure as well. The banks are trading under pressure. But the JSE Limited was trading positively. And also another data that came out as well that affected the JSE, it's Aspen. The whole situation that is happening in Europe with Aspen, there were been... there's been stories that they are trying to wreck the prices of medicine that such to put them higher up. Obviously, they've been quite fined, or there's some situations like that. So it really brought up their shares down to 4.14%.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Tony Modise. Expert analysis there, giving us what happened at the close of business at 5 p.m. negatively impacting on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So, without further ado, let's have a look at your top story. The Financial Intelligence Committee informed Parliament that in 2015-16 financial year, nearly 60 billion rand left South Africa. The illicit financial flows from South Africa continue to hamper development in the country. Neither the Financial Intelligence Centre, or FIC for short, nor the Treasury have a clue on how to proceed forward in making sure that these billions stop leaving our shores. This form of illegal capital flight involves the movement of money out of the country in which it is generated, thereby robbing the country of the economic benefits of the money that they generate. It also raises questions also, why did then the Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan not raise an alarm on this particular matter? The country now looks up to the new Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba and awaits to see if the minister can stir the rot. Every time I hear illicit, I think of myself and hopefully that money comes to me, but it never does. So that's why we bring experts here to come and talk to us and find out exactly what does this mean. We are joined by Mzwanele Manye, who's the president of the PPF. We've got also Mr. Wesley Seal, who is the lecturer at Rhodes University. We're also joined by Unathi Henama, who is a tourism lecturer at Tshwane University of Technology. Gentlemen, thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So you spoke about this quite in a number of ways in expressing in your article, and it was quite interesting to find out that some of this money actually you cannot actually evaluate appropriately because we don't know to what extent they go, but the minimum that was calculated is about 60 billion rand. What does this say about this so trusted banking system, financial system that South Africa has, that has been compared and sometimes even paired as one of the best in the world, or number one for that matter, by the likes of the World Bank and the the IMF, for example?
Well, I think that, I mean, if we know the history of the banks in this country, even the recent history in the banks in this country, we would know that they are complicit in some misdemeanors. So the banks are not innocent at all in this. But I think that more importantly, what this raises is the question of particularly the role that the Financial Intelligence Centre plays, and specifically National Treasury as well. What have they been doing about these illicit flows that have been leaving the country? So that ultimately is the question. It's a bit difficult to shift the blame to the banks. Ultimately, who we should hold accountable are civil servants and particularly those elected to public office, and in this instance, the former finance minister.
Mr. Mzwanele, when we talk about amending the FIC bill, for example, which has been sent back to the president, do you think signing that into law perhaps maybe will help somewhat curb some of these problems? Because that's what the financial institutions are saying in South Africa, that if that law was to be passed, then we might have better regulations and we might be able to stop this illicit money going out of the country.
In fact, the opposite. For us, we're actually, both in the Decolonization Foundation and even with the Progressive Professionals Forum, we're happy that the president is not signing this bill. In fact, he should not sign this bill. This bill will actually expose South Africans to much more shenanigans. What this bill seeks to do, amongst other things, is to disband a very important committee, Anti-Money Laundering Advisory Council, which is currently in place in terms of the current act as unamended, the 201 Act. Now, if you disband that, then it means the committee, which comprises of Defence Force, NIA, police, National Treasury, everyone that has got the wherewithal to deal with these criminal activities, is now disbanded. Why do you want to do that?
But that sounds like it's contradictory. I mean, if you're saying that it disbandles it, and perhaps maybe that will help to form a new committee, because this committee has obviously not done its job over the last, 10, 15 years?
No, look, I think here's the issue. The financial, the FIC Act itself is an act that is supposed to deal with criminality.
Yes.
And issues of money laundering is a criminal act. The issue of financing of terrorism is a criminal act. The issue of corruption is a criminal act. So we argue that as we sit here and now, we have enough laws to deal with these kinds of things. So let's not take the power, because what this bill seeks to do is to take the power from the security cluster into the banks. Instead of reporting matters to the police as it should, we must now report to the accounting authorities, which are banks. And this is a problem. Why is it that now we're having banks having to enforce the law when we have law enforcement authorities that in terms of the constitution of this country, this is their job. If you look at the constitution, section 205, subsection 3, is very clear that all issues of criminal activity must be dealt with by the police. Now, why do you want to take the power away from the police and give it to these unaccountable banks?
Maybe it's an international practice, best practice. I don't know. Unati,
Talking about all of this, what is interesting that in the news today, I read that one employee at MTN, the multinational, was found to have embezzled around about 28 million rands into her private bank account. They were able to pick it up.
I found it funny that it was a her, but anyway.
It's a her. But the issue is that if there are illicit flows from the country, then it's a big problem considering all of the developmental challenges we face as a country. So, I mean, we require also the South African Reserve Bank to play a much more leading role in this. It must not just look only at maintaining our currency. It must play an important role in its observation of the banks.
See, the biggest problem is actually how we name this, just before you come in, Clive. I think this is the biggest problem. In South Africa, if this was happening under the purview of government, the headline would be uncovered corruption in government. Now that this is private sector, we find all kinds of fancy names. If it's not collusion, now it's illicit. What is illicit? We must call it what it is. It's corruption in the private sector that is costing us billions and billions of rands. And therefore, the development of South Africa is not going to go anywhere with the corruption that is in place. In fact, this calls into question the reason why, when we remove Pravin from the seat, that we get the currency collapse. Is it because that under his purview these things were happening?
But he's not been the only finance minister. He's not been the only finance minister. He's not been the only finance minister. And Wesley, in your argument, you raise issues about fundamentally the structure from government side not being enough, so not having enough teeth to bite into the corruption shenanigans that are taking place. What more is the state supposed to do? What parameters can it put that make sure that we don't have this kind of behavior from both corporate and government, by the way?
You see, this is the problem with the discourse. The discourse suggests more teeth, etc. The problem is, and what my article clearly proposed was, people should be doing their jobs. Both the head of the FIC as well as the minister then.
Right.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that, yes, he hasn't been the only minister, but it seems like the head of the FIC was appointed during Trevor Manuel's time. We then had Nhlanhla Nene, and then we had Pravin Gordhan. Or Pravin Gordhan then, The point is that we've had people that were groomed after Trevor Manuel. And so Treasury hasn't really been open to a new broom, as it were. The point is that people should be doing their jobs. And the Auditor General is clear. FIC is not doing their jobs. Whether you want a new law or not, people are saying that this FIC, the new FIC bill, is the silver bullet. No, it's not. People should be doing their jobs. And clearly in this instance, the head of FIC hasn't been doing their jobs. and yet key personnel people are getting bonuses, millions of rands every year, and certainly the former minister didn't have the political will to deal with the issues.
And the question is why? I'm getting tweets saying that this is fake news. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, the facts are there. 60 billion rand left the country last year. Even FIC doesn't dispute that.
Yeah.
And the question is, during the incumbent, Mr. Mitchell has been the head of FIC since 2002. Between 2002 and 2012, the first decade of him being in office, 122 billion US dollars left South Africa.
Okay.
This is and this is not us. This is also coming from the international
institutions as well.
That's right.
Yeah. I just want to change our focus slightly. Minister Gigaba is heading up to the US to meet with his counterparts, but not only that, he's going to be meeting with the likes of Moody's. Hopefully, when he gets there, they're in a good mood. There's a sentiment that is growing in South Africa's social media aspect that the minister has got is bitten more than he can chew. He's going to have a challenge in convincing with his new team. He's brought in his own people, and so he's changing the way Treasury has been working, and that will work against him because the people there are more conservative. They like to see things happen as they are. What is your response to that, Wesley?
So you've pointed out exactly what the problem is. Treasury has always been a problem post-apartheid. I mean, this is exactly why a new broom is needed. And hopefully the minister, what we're certainly saying, what I'm proposing, is that through articles that I've written, is that the minister will look at these kind of things.
But he hasn't spoken about radical economic transformation.
No, in particular, this issue.
Yeah.
So he's going to hold FIC more accountable.
Right.
He's going to stop bonuses of millions of rands if they're not doing their work.
Yeah.
He's going to ask them and interrogate them. This hasn't happened before. And it's a pity that we can't hold the former minister accountable. But this hasn't happened before. And we're certainly convinced that the new minister will come in and that he will sweep clean.
Zanele, why is he going solo? What happened to the delegation? What happened to him?
No, I think this is a communication issue because the institutions that he's meeting now are more government-to-government kind of arrangements as things stand now.
Right.
The bigger roadshow with everyone is probably going to come at some point. So there's nothing wrong right now. But the challenge that he's going to face is the noise that is being made by business leadership South Africa. They've been acting very recklessly, very irresponsibly, that when the minister is busy trying to put things together, they're out there knocking everything out, making a lot of reckless statements and draining the confidence of the markets into South Africa. Them and the DA are actually birds of the same feather. Why is it that we have this DA march into National Treasury when we're trying to get our story together? So you have the DA and the business leadership South Africa. These two entities in the main must be held accountable for the further downgrades that we're going to get if we are, and for the further depreciation of the rand because of their reckless activities.
Unati, how does the world look at us in 30 seconds?
We remain an investment destination, not to invest in. Countries like Rwanda are more attractive than South Africa right now. We must reduce the budget deficit. We must stop being a welfare state. And that will do a lot to make our finances correct because, I mean, 50% of our GDP goes to servicing debt, so it's not sustainable.
Right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Maybe we need to go for skin bleaching so that we can...